This conference will now.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending today's SAI community meeting. Today is our week of TAM V2. Mickey and Jay will drive the conversation. Yeah. Would you like to go ahead, Mickey?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the task was to say something about the hardware mapping. I can say a little about the hardware mapping. I'm not sure how much, given that it needs to be abstracted quite a bit. But I did want to contrast what the two different proposals do as far as how you create the objects. There's a lot of similarities, and there are some differences as far as object creation. So the order in which you create things is a little different because in Jay's proposal, you do the ACL tables first and then you refer to them. And in my proposal, you create a TAM-INT group object, and then you create the ACL object, which has an action that refers to that. So that's just, it's a difference in order. But let me go through what is similar. So in both
Hey,
cases,
Mickey,
yeah,
can I just interrupt? Let me just set the baseline of the discussion for the other folks. So a few things which we agreed in last meeting, and I believe Ramesh was there too. And I had a discussion with Ramesh and ITF as well. One thing which we agreed, Sonic point of view, we want a single set of API, single method to enable INT, right? So that was an agreement. And
agree.
I think, yeah, so I think the task given to you was a little bit different, was that if you create the TAM objects, then finally what kind of extra steps you have to take to translate into an ACL object, which is your single point of view for anything INT, right, in your proposal. So essentially, we still have the TAM objects, and then the way I will read your steps are the subsequent set of steps which have the TAM object handle, and then you tease apart the other things from it, and then create your ACL object, right? So that was the last meeting agreement which we walked out with.
No, so I wanted to step through what the differences are in the two methods, and then I can show at a high level what it means. The information is all there either way, and it's possible to get the information. What I was trying to point out in the previous meetings is not that it's impossible to do what you have in your proposal. It is possible, just that it has some implications.
Okay, got it. So yeah, so before we move, Mickey and myself, does anybody have any questions on just the discussion topic? I guess not. So let's go ahead, Mickey.
So on the left is Jay's document where I added a little later on, but it's probably not in enough detail because it's very short. And on the right is what I had in my proposal. So things like report object and transport object are identical. I didn't change anything there. Or collector object. So those are all steps that you have to do. Where it starts differing is in, is TAM one big thing that has all your different attributes, both for initiator and terminator, like collector and report and so on. So in Jay's proposal, as it is now, you do an INT object, and it has a lot of things in it. And in Jay's proposal, there is here an ACL object list, and this refers to what was done in step 1, which is an ACL table. And that ACL table has an action of insert int. So that's what would drive, you would then, anything that matches these ACL fields, in this case it's source MAC, but you can make it any of the ACL fields you want. You insert int, and then there's a bunch of attributes here, such as these IFA ones, max hop count, max length, namespace, and so on, that would affect what you do when you insert. In the proposal that I had, there were a couple things that I wanted to point out. So one is the TAM-INT group it's like the TAM-INT, but it's only the initiator aspects that would vary depending on what you match in your ACL. So you have this TAM-INT group, and then when you create an ACL table, instead of your action being a Boolean to insert int, it would be a reference to this group, to the int group, which has all these parameters. So it's just a reference being done the other way around. So what that means, so I just abstracted at a very high level. Suppose you have a hardware table where you start from an ACL. So not every implementation may be this way, but if you have an implementation that starts from an ACL, then this ACL, you have a set of entries which are associated with, it could be a port, it could be a VLAN, it could be the entire switch, so on, but that's somehow there's some way to do that within your ACL. Depending on the hardware, it can vary whether you do a bitmap, a label, or some other mechanism. You have a bunch of match fields within your ACL. So things like your MAC address, IP address, protocol L4 ports, and so on. And then the question is, okay, now you match all these things. You have an action where you set some things internally within your switch. So that can be abstracted in many different ways, but the way I abstracted it here was just to say that you have a bunch of entries are associated with things like ports, and then your action derives some parameter, like say int group, and then that parameter then becomes the key to another table that then inserts headers, could be IFA or IOAM or P4INT or so on, which then inserts a bunch a header according to a bunch of those attributes that you saw in the TAM-INT object, and then you can go on and insert metadata and so on after that. So any questions on what that means in terms of what this hardware structure is? So then to get that hardware structure, I have a bunch of match fields. I need to know which port or VLAN or so on it is associated with. So in Jay's proposal, we have the port or VLAN or such object binds to, refers to a TAM object, refers to an INT object, refers to an ACL. So if you follow this chain, there is eventually an association between, say, a port and an ACL table or group, which has all the rules within it. So you have to follow that chain to figure out how to program, whether it be a bitmap or a label or so on. Then you have your match fields within your ACL, or things like this. And then you see the insert INT action didn't give you the parameter you need to tie to all your tables that do the actual insertion, but they do reference from the INT object to the ACL object list. So when you see this reference, you can reverse that and figure out what to stick in as your INT group, and then the rest of it follows.
Mike, one comment.
Yep.
So I think if you go above in the attributes, remember we had a discussion and there was a feedback from you to get to get rid of the node type, because that can be derived from the ACL actions.
Yeah.
So we don't have a node type. So I think probably I have not updated the doc, but I will update the doc.
Yeah.
I thought I might have, but might have missed.
Yeah, true. So it was right there.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
That's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the rules that you would stick in that table that I showed in the beginning, or the entries in the ACL, are those entries that have this insert INT action on them.
This rule is so today in the TAM proposal we have not put this rule, which is insert INT. Is there? No, we have insert and delete, right?
Yeah, it's in your proposal, right?
Yeah, it is there. Yeah, I remember it. That's what we changed it to. Yeah, type and aligned it with a little bit of your proposal to make it as ACL action. Yeah, I remember it now.
Yeah. So if you follow references, you have all the information you need. So I didn't do a diagram for what I had in my proposal, but essentially the ACLs work in the normal way that you have a port or VLAN or switch that refers to a ACL table or ACL table group, and that gives you the association of port, VLAN, or switch to the ACL. Then you have all the match fields in the ACL, and then the difference is just in this group in which way, who references who. In this case, the ACL entry actually has an INT group, which refers to an object, and for each one of these TAM INT group objects, you would internally create a value of some field that you set in the ACL, and then you use that field to look up the next table. And then how you program the next table is all pretty much the same thing. It's so it's whether it's a table that has just the initiator things, or whether it's a table with everything. It doesn't change the mapping of what you need to do to program your hardware for this, for the initiator aspects. What I was trying to refer to was, in terms of implications, is when you have multiple entries and so on. But either way, it's certainly possible to get the information you need and program it. Any questions on the initiator stuff?
I'm good.
So on the things like report and collector and so on, another difference which I had is I only had it this way, but in Jay's proposal it is allowed, is you could take this report and transport and collector and refer to them through the event action and event objects that are already defined before we discussed all the TAM INT stuff. So to do that, you would create an event action which has a report type that refers to the report object. So that says when some event happens, go off and generate a report which could be protobuf, could be IPFix, could be whatever else. And then you create an event object. So the event object is triggered by an event attribute type. So in this case, you could say when the flow state changes. So if I have something like a 5-tuple, when it's new, you count that as a flow state change. And then if there's some other significant change, like a significant change in latency or in the transit delay or latency across the switch, you could treat that as a flow state change. Then you refer to the action list, which gave you the report object. And then it includes a collector list. And I think the collector referred to the transporter. And then you would refer to this entire event object from from the TAM object, which you bind to in the normal manner. But all these things of going through event action and event object is something you can do in either proposal. So that's kind of all I was able to do. I was a little short on time in between these two meetings, but it shows that both are possible or implementable.
Hey, Mickey, thanks. I think that gives a very good idea that how the flow will look like. Appreciate you going through this exercise. So another thing which we can do, and I understand the objectives that you have an implementation. I don't want to do a major rewrite on that. And I think I'm looking for feedback here. What we can do is we can create both the workflows, which is starting from the ACL and stay in the ACL, and other is starting from the TAM and then creating the translations internally, and which will eventually look like everything is going through ACL. And then put a guidance that preferred mode of implementation is through TAM, because that gives us a single API invocation from Sonic, but other way can be done, but is less preferred. I don't know if that's acceptable in the community. We do that, but essentially what we are saying, there are two modes. One is a preferred mode, everything should go through that, and second is less preferred but is available.
So
that will be a sort of a compromise, just to not to do a complete rewrite of all the work you have done.
So the point of contention is really the action on the ACL entry.
Mm-hmm.
Because the action on the ACL entry that you had in your proposal is just a Boolean, right?
Right.
So you need something to bind the ACL and the INT object together. And that is the ACL list that you have in the TAM INT object, right?
Right.
If you go the other way, then you need something from the ACL that refers to the TAM INT object. So it's not a Boolean, it's an object reference.
It is an object reference. So TAM INT group object, can you refer it to where it was created? I think that should be doable.
This is in the ACL itself, right? So it's a separate attribute from what you had, which was just a Boolean. So
and what are the details on the attribute of this?
This basically refers to a TAM INT object.
Okay, and we do create TAM INT object independently. right?
Yes.
And that will be present in the TAM object. So if you walk the chain, then TAM object will give you a TAM INT object.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have it bound that way, but you do. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm just trying to give an idea that how both the proposal will work. So in this case, what will happen? You can create a standalone TAM INT object and not necessary. So, okay, let's say there are two proposals. One is that everything is chained through the TAM object. And the proposal right now we are talking about is everything is chained through the ACL object, right? So in this case, you will create a standalone TAM INT object, which not necessarily is binded to TAM object, which is a standalone object. And then you will create the initialization of the ACL entry with this TAM INT object.
Yeah.
And this works. And in the other proposal, this TAM INT object will be part of the TAM object itself,
Yeah.
right? So both works, and you're right. Both seamlessly works, in my opinion. I don't see a problem of the Boolean here. So maybe I'm missing something.
No, but so are we saying we would have both attributes in the ACL entry, and you pick one?
Yeah,
Or
that's what I'm saying, right? So if you follow the left proposal, which is a TAM proposal,
yeah.
then the ACL entry will look like action insert. And
Okay.
what I'm saying, this is we can put a guidance that this is the preferred mode of operation, but you can have an alternate implementation, which is now the highlighted link. In this
Okay.
case, ACL will have the TAM INT object, and both are optional, so you can choose one or the other,
Yeah, that's true.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, that's what my read on the exercises, and it looks reasonably okay. And then on the implementation side, it all depends. Let's say that there is an implementation on on one of the platform which it really does not care of any other telemetry objects, right? It does not do data streaming, it does not do eventing. All it cares about is INT. In
Yeah.
that case, it may choose to go through just ACL,
Yeah. I
right?
just wasn't sure how to explain it because we need to abstract it, right? I'm not going to present all the
Yeah,
details.
I can help you with that. That's not a problem. Yeah,
Um,
if you send me the doc, I can just clean it up, put some, and we can offline work on it.
yeah, I put the version on the right into my pull request. The version on the left, I wasn't sure what to do with it. I guess I could just send it to you.
Just send it to me. Yeah, I'll clean it up. No, this is good. This is good.
Okay.
So, so just to summarize, so Jin and other folks, what we are saying is uh, that there is a proposal which is through TAM object, right? So Sonic may invoke only TAM top level TAM APIs, and everything is kind of hidden underneath, and then SideDriver takes care of it. Now that's a fairly comprehensive object because it contains streaming, eventing, reporting. It's a fairly comprehensive set of suite of APIs. There might be an implementation which really does not care about anything else, and in that case, we are still using a lot of TAM objects as Mickey walked over. We are using the collector, the transport, there are a lot of the report, and the TAM INT object also. But the bind point of the everything, all the objects, is under the ACL object. And one Sonic implementation may choose to invoke the ACL API directly. And I think
Okay.
that's reasonable.
Okay. So I'll send you the Word doc, and I guess you can work on the Word doc. I will do, I guess, a pull request on top of yours with details of the ACL to TAM object binding and a bunch of other details that I think we should discuss.
Yeah.
That are they're not big picture stuff like this. It's just which which conditions should we put on things, what is IFA specific or not, and so on, right? There's
right. Yeah, and we can add conditional attributes on that if there are conditions. Some of them are clarified, but if it's not, then we can definitely enhance that.
I mean, you'll see there's some differences between the pull requests, so I'll do a version on top of your pull requests with what those differences are, and then we can discuss which ones we should do.
Okay, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not sure if there's anything else we need to discuss right now, or just do a bunch of offline work until the next meeting.
Yeah, I think there's nothing else for me to discuss. I can work, I think Mickey and myself, we will work together offline and then send out on the email the proposal.
Yeah.
And if that's all, then we can give back 25 minutes to the team.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you, Mickey and Jay. This is a good progress. Anyone on the call? If you have any questions, you can send either to the mailing list, the OCP-SAI, or send to Jay and Mickey. The next session of TAM will be in 2 weeks. A heads up for next week's SAI community meeting is regular pull request and proposal discussing. We have 2 topics. One is the counters from Mananox we didn't finish last week. The second one is S-Flow proposal from Dell. That's next week's agenda. Okay, with that, we are going to return 25 minutes to everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.